بسم الله والحمد لله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of Real Talk. We are in the DHUL HIJJah series now of Real Talk, and last night we had our first episode, and it was a little bit different because we've got a different set now. It's a bit of a giveaway. We are now planning on putting this into a podcast, inshallah, with a lot of the requests that we've had from our viewers. It makes it easier to access and to listen back when you're driving, going to the gym or whatever, inshallah, it'll be easier for you to now watch these episodes or hear these episodes, I should say. Now, last night's episode, we had a new host as well, Brother Ali Assad. It was a fantastic episode with none other than the CEO of NZF, Brother Ismail Davids, and he is the expert on Hajj. And this whole episode was just answering everyone's questions that everyone has about Hajj, about the chaos, the misconceptions, and all of that. He really shed light on that. So if you did miss that episode, I really urge you to go back and watch it. It's available on NZF's Facebook page and on YouTube, and inshallah soon on Spotify as well. Let's go talking into tonight's episode. We're talking about marriage. It's one of our favorite Real Talk topics to talk about. And joining me tonight, we have Sister Saara Sabbagh, all the way from Melbourne. Assalamu alaikum, Sarah. How are you?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
You just arrived today, didn't you?
I did.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm just enjoying your weather. I'm sure you get that all the time.
Our weather, it's cold today, is it though?
It's spring for us. This
really?
kind of beautiful weather.
I thought it was quite cold for us. Subhanallah. So you've come all the way from Melbourne. This is your second time on the show, so welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to meet you in person this time. Last time we did it via, it was an online, I think it was in Ramadan, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it was in Ramadan online. So it's lovely to have you on the set and having you on like the new set as well, mashallah. Before we do get cracking into the really interesting topic that we have for tonight, we are now on the precipice of the first 10 days of DHUL HIJJah, and these are the most important, valuable days as Muslims of our Muslim calendar, of the Islamic calendar. And it's very important for us to shed light on the fact that, watching yesterday's Hajj episode, it really made me want to go to Hajj, and I thought, I really wish I could be there. But, subhanAllah, even though, those of us who haven't had the opportunity to go to Hajj this year, we can still make the most of these really special 10 days from our home, doing, through our dua and through our sadaqah and through our qurban. So I do urge you all to go onto the NZF website. You can donate your qurban there. It's given locally to those most vulnerable in Australia who probably wouldn't have the means to afford meat. So, giving locally here to those who need it. And then also you can set automated sadaqah payments as well through the NZF website. The good thing about this one is that you can have certain amounts that you want to set for most of the days. And then if you want to set like a big lump sum for the day of Arafah, which is the most important and special day, then we can set that up for the day of Arafah, inshallah. And yes, I wanted to, this kind of ties into you as well and what you're doing with benevolence. One thing that I really, really admire about NZF is we all know NZF is the National Zakat Foundation. And this is an organization that is the leading Muslim NGO that collects zakat and distributes it locally. But now they've been doing so much more work than just collecting zakat. They partner up with experts like yourself in different fields and with organizations that can help fill in the gaps that are in the Muslim community, whether it's, certain gaps where there's inadequacies, whether it's in, government can't provide for them or there's not enough Islamic organizations. In your case, dealing with the converts, the reverts, the new Muslims or the born again Muslims. And there's whether it's dealing with elderly or dealing with victims of domestic violence, NZF really helps fill in those gaps. So the people who are otherwise, falling through the cracks. So it's, let's talk about that, and we'll talk about that through what I want to talk to you about today, inshallah. So in our last episode, and now we're getting into the topic here, we spoke about the wonderful work that you're doing with benevolence and how you're really filling in this gap in the community for our revert and convert. It's all the new Muslims, and then even the Muslims who were born Muslims, but they just weren't as practicing. Now you're working on another project, or I think you've been working on it for a while, and I want to talk to you about that. It's called Good Beginnings, and this is also part of benevolence.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Can you first start off by just introducing yourself to our viewers? Some of them may not have seen you in the last episode. Sure. Introduce yourself, and what are you currently working on?
All right. Well, first of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here.
We have immense respect for the work that NZF does, and we too partner up with them on various projects, but specifically our convert program. Yeah. And we're looking at opening the door and seeing how we can partner up with the Good Beginnings project that I'm going to speak to you about today.
Amazing. Yeah.
So the work that I do, I have been working in community for over 3 decades.
Oh,
so it's quite a while. And I wear many hats, but the one that I'm super passionate about is that I worked with Benevolence. I was part of the creation of Benevolence in 2008. And we do many things. The project that I'm currently working on, or have been working on for the past 4 years, in collaboration with Victoria University. So this is a joint project that we received funding for by the Department of Social Services, and we created this project called Good Beginnings. And the intention of the project is a pre-marriage course for Muslim couples. Wow. It is the first of its kind that we have seen in Australia. And what makes it so unique is that it brings together best practice counseling techniques and research, as well as the prophetic method and the prophetic way in terms of how he dealt with his family and his wives. Wow, and so through research, consultation with the community and research, we brought these two, areas together, and also grounded in Australian law. We brought these 3 areas together, and Good Beginnings was created. So we're super excited about it, because we know there's a need for it. Yeah. We know that other communities have already had pre-marriage programs. The church has had it. Other religious communities have had it. And in some religious communities, it's compulsory to actually do a pre-marriage course prior to getting married. And there's a valid reason as to why. So for us, we're just so excited that we've just started in this path now.
Wow, mashallah. So have you actually launched it now, or you have launched it?
Yes, so the launch was just a few weeks ago. Yep. For the past 4 years, it has been research, consultation with the Board of Imams in Victoria, and they have come on board, and they are part of the program. And then we've done training. So what we've done is we've taken marriage mentors. We've trained marriage mentors. Yep. We've had 4 cohorts that we've trained them in the program. Yep. So we have marriage mentors that are out there right now in Melbourne ready to take on couples, which is amazing. So the program's already launched. It's already out there, and people are taking on the course.
Alhamdulillah. Wow. So this was 4 years in the making.
4 years in the making.
Wow. So you've done the research, you've done the work. That shows that it wasn't like a quick thing. It's something that you've spent a lot of time with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. What was your inspiration behind doing a premarital course? What made you think, this is something I want to tap into?
I think everyone that I've ever spoken to that works with families has always said, you know what we need? We need a pre-marriage course. So I don't think it was our idea. It's like it wasn't.
You're just filling in that gap.
We're filling that gap. You know how you spoke about, falling through the cracks and filling in the cracks. Yeah. And essentially, it was just an opportunity. We've always known as a Muslim community, we need this. We've always known that. I used to always speak to the Board of Imams. I used to speak to marriage counselors, and they've always said, we really needed to prepare Muslim couples prior to getting married. They get married, they really don't know what they're getting themselves into. But how do we prepare them? We don't have dating pre-Islam. They get married and they're like, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And there's so much, it's quite overwhelming. And so the impetus really was a couple of things. One, there was a need. But 2, because I would see couples all the time come to me and say to me how just unhappy they are in their first early years of marriage, which is really surprising.
You would think those are like, your honeymoon,
the honeymoon years. And when we would see that their first few years are unsettling, and they didn't have the faith tools. We come from a tradition where everything about the Prophet ﷺ has been narrated. We know exactly how he treated his wives. We know exactly how he managed conflict. We know exactly what he did when he was upset. We know exactly what he did when he was happy. We know how he ate. We know how he slept. We know everything about him.
SubhanAllah,
so why not analyze him as a husband? And that's how this course came to be.
Wow, I love that. That's so interesting, mashallah. Can you then provide an overview of the main topics then, and how does this course work? Because you did say that so for us as Muslims, we don't, date before marriage. So how does this course work? Is it for both the man and the male and the female? And give me an idea.
Okay, I'll give you. I'll
just run it down. Run me down.
Okay. So how it works is that you have a couple that are intending to get married. And we want to get them in those early stages. So they have intention to get married, and this program also works for the first years of marriage as well. So we've been bringing in couples in the first 5 years because it still works. So a couple want to get married, and they find a marriage mentor. So we've trained marriage mentors. We're going to continue training marriage mentors. We're looking at coming to Sydney and training marriage mentors here.
Yes, please.
Yes,
we need it.
And so if you're a qualified marriage mentor, you go ahead and take on the couple. And then they meet with you. They can either meet with you in person or online. And you do a series of 4 sessions.
So it's one-on-one sessions.
It's one-on-one sessions.
Yep. Okay.
And so what happens is that we have an online course that is a platform that they go through. So it's 8 units. Yep. But they also do this really interesting, which is an inventory. They answer a set of questions, which gives me, if I'm their marriage mentor, a snapshot of their relationship. It tells me their upbringing. It tells me their stress and how they manage stress. And it just tells me, we also discuss it as a couple and all of us together. So there's different areas: stress management, conflict, communication, finance, your family history, all these areas that show up in this questionnaire that the couple may not have had a chance to discuss because you wouldn't talk about all the topics, and the questions are so detailed that you won't even raise it. I'll give you an example. Before a couple get married, they generally don't think about how I manage stress. Do you think about how you manage stress? It's not something you think about.
Yeah, and you're probably not having those kind of conversations, in the first few honeymoon years of marriage.
No, but imagine not knowing how your future partner manages stress, and say they manage stress by switching off completely, turning to, I don't know, Netflix or football or whatever it might be. And you're the kind of person that says, but I like to talk. That's how I manage stress. What we're going to see immediately in the first year is miscommunication. You're going to see one person shutting down and the other person running after them. And then they'll get into a cycle, and they might exaggerate the situation and take them into another problem. But in reality, could have really been averted if we just understood something really simple and had these conversations prior to getting married.
So I'm thinking, it's not even just in the first 5 years. I think this is something like all couples have an issue with.
It is.
The girl wants to talk and the man doesn't want to. It's subhanAllah. Wow.
And they come from somewhere. We may have observed our parents. When we may have observed our parents, when they had a disagreement, maybe mom did something, dad did something else, and without realizing, we've kind of modeled that.
It's ingrained into us.
When we have our own household, without realizing it, we've taken on those traits and we do them, just like we've taken other traits. And so it opens the door to discuss finances. It opens the door to discuss gender roles. Are we going to have gender roles?
So these are all the topics that you otherwise wouldn't want to discuss so openly because you would want to avoid the potential conflict So you're really airing this and having these before. So this is either before marriage or in the first few years, having those really hard topics, those discussions.
And you're really equipping the couple with tools because the program is filled with tools. It's not just a talking, it's filled with tools. And you're not a counselor, you're a mentor. And in today's society, we really can appreciate the word mentor or coach. We have coaches and mentors for various areas in our life. Well, why not for our marriage? And so it doesn't feel so daunting, like I'm seeing a counselor. No, I'm seeing a marriage mentor.
It even sounds a little bit like, people are a little bit, when it comes to seeing a therapist or a psychologist, they might see it as, okay, there's a problem with me or something. But seeing a mentor, it feels like there's a bit more of a positive kind of vibe on it. So it doesn't feel as daunting as you said.
It really is. And I think the biggest part of the program that really, really excites me, like I said, not only is it based in best practice marriage counseling and research, but it's based in the way of the beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So constantly we're taking tools out of that. When he spoke to us about how to mitigate anger, we actually talk about, well, how can we use that? Or, well, how do you use spirituality as a means of connecting to each other? Yeah. So many tools that the Prophet ﷺ has given us. And I think the last time when we spoke about converts, we once again said, let's focus on him as his way of dealing with new Muslims.
Yes, I remember, and it was different. There was like a different level of like mercy or leniency that was shown to like a new Muslim than to someone who's been there for a while, you know? Like, And that's just, it's a wisdom, a hikmah to do that. Yes, subhanAllah. I have a question. When you had mentioned that there, you know, based on someone's upbringing, they might react or respond to a situation a little bit differently. For instance, you know, one person in the relationship doesn't want to have a conversation when they're stressed, and the other person in the relationship, they're both stressed, but the other one, she wants to talk about it. They want to have that conversation. Can these sort of, you know, traits that were maybe learned when we were children, is there a potential for those to be changed, or what would be the solution to something like that?
Okay, so it's not about necessarily changing them. It's about understanding.
Okay.
So when I understand that my partner acts A, B, C in this particular manner because of this, and I don't read into it, is one thing. So it's gain understanding, but also for my partner to understand, my spouse to understand that it impacts me in a particular way when he acts in this manner. So it's understanding and having that communication to understand, when you do this, it affects me like this.
Right.
And I don't create another story in my head necessarily. Because most of the time when our spouses act in a particular way, we've gone off to a story.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's very easy to do that. Yeah.
It's very easy to do that. And we've got a narrative, we've got a story in our heads like, oh, you did this because da 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 da. So we want to mitigate that. We want to open the communication.
Yes.
And we want our spouse to understand, when you do this, it impacts me like this. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I always tell couples, you don't want to get married to somebody with the intention of, I'm going to change you. You know, no, it's not about changing. It's about understanding how our actions impact our spouse. We don't live on our own anymore. When we're getting married, everything we do is going to impact another human being. And so being aware of that.
It's time to pray. Okay, my next question then would be, with all the work that you've done in the community, even before Good Beginnings came about, what have you seen that in the Muslim community is the biggest challenges that new married couples are facing?
The biggest thing, and I don't know, obviously I don't know in the broader non-Muslim community, but what I have been seeing is, it's going to sound so simple, but it's two things. One is communication. Everything boils down.
That's all it is.
To communication. Right? Like we gave the example of stress before, but it could be a number of things. It could be how the finances are managed. And you're being stingy. I'm not being stingy. I'm doing this. I'm putting money aside for whatever. We're just not communicating it well. Like communication. The other one is, there seems to be a lack of discussion about each one's role.
Interesting.
They enter the relationship.
So like gender roles?
It seems that way. They enter the relationship assuming that everyone's just going to know what to do.
So they're not having these hard
these
conversations beforehand.
Someone's going to cook dinner, right? Someone's going to cook, and someone's going to pay bills, right? And
do you find this is more of a modern day dilemma that maybe the previous generation didn't have?
Absolutely. Definitely.
Let's talk about that. When it comes to gender roles, what are you seeing? I think it's kind of obvious, but what are you finding is a situation right now, especially with the generation now that are getting married?
I am seeing there's a lot of confusion. I am seeing there's a lot of confusion about how am I supposed to show up as a woman in a relationship? How am I to show up as a man in a relationship? What is masculinity? What is femininity? Do we even have that? And as Muslims, we do know that Allah Ta'ala has informed both. And they're broad, they're very broad. But there is that we are informed by. And so there is confusion. There's a lot of confusion. I feel sorry for this new generation because they're growing up in a world that is so different to what our age grew up in, where gender itself, this could take us totally off topic, but gender itself has been so
blurred that it doesn't even exist anymore, and therefore that impacts gender roles. And then in Islam, I was thinking yesterday as well, I was just sitting there thinking, in our deen, gender plays such a huge...
We are a gender tradition.
We are a deen based, all our rulings are based on gender.
We are a gendered tradition, and make no doubt about that.
Our children are now going to be growing up in this world where there's supposed to be absolutely no difference between man and female and the roles of a man and female. So it's not really taking us off topic, because when it comes to a topic like marriage, it's so important to know the difference between a man and female, masculinity and femininity, and the role, like what Islam plays into that as well, and then what your roles are, what Allah expects from you. It's not even, what my spouse expects from me. These are like, Allah expects these particular things from you as a female and as a man. You have these duties in His eyes. But for this generation who gender is like nothing now, how does that impact their ability to follow the deen? You know,
it definitely will impact it. But in terms of marriage, as you mentioned before, if they don't have these conversations prior to entering into a relationship, and something so simple, like I said, who's cooking dinner?
Yeah, it's like,
if they don't have these conversations, if there's an assumption made, then it will get them into a bit of strife. Like I said, who's paying bills? Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran that the men are the maintainers and providers of women. And we don't, in the course, we use Quranic ayahs, but we leave it to the couple. The couple, we just say, how do you want to manage your finances? Have you spoken about your finances? As long as they agree on the way they want to run things, but they need to have these conversations.
What are you finding is, like, are men trying to say, okay, now I want to go 50-50 with the bills, and the women are saying, I want to go...
It's every couple is different.
Okay.
I've had a few couples that have said, if you'd like to work, it's completely up to you. I'm not going to ask that of you. And I've had other couples that have both said, no, I think I'd like to have a shared account, and we'd like to share the expenses together. So it's not like a one thing fits everyone.
No.
And Allah Ta'ala, is not so prescriptive. If there is a difference, then there is the prescription there. That the man is the provider and protector. There is the prescription there. However, if the couple feel that no, they both want to, then it's go ahead.
And sometimes in this day and age, it's like you kind of do need two income family.
Absolutely. And that's why it can't be so specific. Because each generation will be different, each time will be different. But so as long as there's mutual respect and understanding and communication between the two.
So that communication is really, really important.
I can't emphasize that every problem stems from a lack of communication.
What do you think the problem, why is that such a big issue in our Muslim community in the marriages at the moment? The communication issue.
So I think, like I said, I haven't worked with the broader non-Muslim community, so I don't know what the issues are. But within our community, we need to remember that we have guidelines as to when a couple are getting to know each other. We have boundaries, and they're not dating, they're not living together, they're not spending 5 years together, 10 years together before getting married. They're usually getting to know each other in a shorter time frame. I'm generalizing now. I know there are different couples do different things. I know I'm being generalized. I'm probably speaking from a different generation even.
I was just thinking from our generation, our generation. No, okay. I don't know how long they've been
probably completely irrelevant to this generation.
But generally Islamic be the way that it should be done.
I'm speaking from the Islamic perspective.
Yes, correct.
And so therefore, they wouldn't have had this time to communicate and maybe have a bit of conflict and know how to communicate. That may be something.
And is that a reason why having a pre-marriage course is so important? Because you're facilitating that communication.
You're not only facilitating that communication, they're also doing the units. They're doing a course together, like each one in their own home. They're doing the course, and then they're talking about it. So we give them some set questions, and they're talking about it, and they'll come to the next session, and we'll talk about, well, how did that go? And we'll talk about real scenarios that they're facing that we can give them tools to work through. They might have a stressful moment. Has anything happened that week? Are you organizing the wedding? Where are you living? Are you living with the in-laws? Are you living on your own? All these questions. Are there expectations from your family that you're moving with you? So it's all these questions that they need to
based on your work and with everything that you've been doing with this course so far, what differences or positive outcomes have you witnessed as a result of couples doing a pre-marriage course?
So the couples that I've worked with, the positive is definitely tools and skills in managing various situations. We give them tools that, like I said, if they're in a situation of conflict or managing the in-laws or whatever it might be, there are actual tools that we give them. So this is not counseling. So definitely upside has been they feel more equipped, and they feel they were able to open up conversations that otherwise they may not have.
Yeah.
They might have just, I didn't feel like I was confident to open it up. But it became a general conversation. It's like, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in the early years where you're still, you don't have that really strong connection yet, or you might be a bit shy to have these conversations, or, Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
What, how can individuals identify the qualities that they should seek in a prospective spouse? And also, how do they, so like, because I understand that you got to understand yourself and know like all the, whether it's childhood things that you're still healing from, but then also how do you know what would suit you the best as well? Like, how do you know what personality and what type? Because we all have our types, but can a course like this also help you find who is the best type of person that you would be suitable for? Or do you have to already have found the person?
Not quite.
Okay, so it's not like a matchmaking course.
No, it's not a matchmaking. That's next. We definitely need more of those. As Muslims, alhamdulillah, we believe that marriage is already predestined. And your partner is already chosen for you.
That's actually a really good point. It's
kind
of like,
So I know that might sit uncomfortably with some people that may not be married, for example, or that may have had a dysfunctional relationship or have gone through divorce. But there are 4 areas in our life that are predestined. Allah Ta'ala says, this is already predestined for you. And whether we marry or whether we don't marry, and the type of person we marry is going to impact the way we show up every day. And it's going to affect our relationship with God. It's going to affect our journey towards Allah.
Yep.
And we need to trust that Allah Ta'ala is matching us with a person because they're going to impact us so much so. This is where all the growth is going to occur. Marriage is work. And that's what we say to people. We have this idea of marriage.
I was just going to say, I don't think people see it as that, They think, I want a best friend that I can travel the world with.
And you can have a best friend. And the beautiful thing about the Prophet ﷺ is he had the most beautiful love story with Khadija radiallahu anha, with Aisha, all these ones. The stories that we have with Khadija, like it brings you to tears. It's an absolute love story. You could make a movie out of it. Right? The way he adored her and it's just amazing. And so therefore we can have that love story. And Allah Ta'ala did tell us that marriage is meant to be our comfort. So when I say it's work, I'm saying that when the Prophet ﷺ says it's the completion of half your religion, people just assume it's for one reason. It's telling us to complete a half our religion is to avoid harams. But in reality, it's also a completion of half our religion because your spouse completes you in the way that they're going to push your buttons in areas you didn't even know you had. That doesn't sound romantic, but you're going to grow in those areas.
Yeah.
And you're going to grow and you're going to become a better person as a result. You could turn the other way as well, but this is why we want to enhance marriages. That there's an opportunity there for growth and development. And you're going to push his buttons too. Because most couples will just point the finger at their spouse. He needs to change because A, B, C. She needs to change because da, 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 da.
Yeah.
But what marriage is that it allows us to see ourselves. It's like we're looking in the mirror every day. And we know when we point a finger at our spouse, if we really look inside of us like, oh, am I that person? Am I messy? Am I running late for events? And why is that bothering me so much so? Where is it going? I don't know what your question was now.
I think I forgot as well, but you're hitting all the right notes.
But the thing is that
Oh yes, it was how do you know
someone?
Yeah, how do you know if someone is suited to you? But I think that was more of a matchmaking question.
The thing is, so marriage is predestined. Our job is to seek, is to do the work. You know, I always give this example of Musa alayhi salam when he was at the edge of the sea. Right? That's it. Pharaoh was behind him. The enemies were behind him. There was nowhere to go. It was a dead end. And he trusted that Allah Ta'ala will save him, but he was a dead end. But Allah Ta'ala tells him to hit the sea with his staff, as if the staff is going to cut the sea. And it's not going to. But he had to do something. And our job is to do something. So we don't just sit back and say, well, rizq is predestined, so I'll just sit back. My spouse is predestined, I'll just sit back. Our job is to do. But we trust that Allah Ta'ala has given us what is good for us. But what is it that we seek? We seek as the Prophet ﷺ told us to seek. And that is character and religion. That is, but within that, we're after compatibility. Yeah. We're after, you know, do our families get on? Will we have a match?
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. Just making sure you get along with the in-laws as well. Like, because they become your second family. Absolutely. Is that also one of the things that you would touch on in your Good Beginnings course?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. To look at upbringing. Are you a close-knit family or not close-knit family? How you want to create your own family.
Yeah. I was just thinking that the next question that I had here, I think it also kind of goes back into a matchmaking one, but I'll ask it anyways. And let's see what you think. It's just getting your opinion more, really. It seems that Muslims across all age groups are eager to get married. So, you know, there's a lot of people in our community now that have had divorces at a later age as well. So we've got to, I know myself, I can count how many people I know within their 40s that are looking for a spouse. So it's across all age groups now. And they're struggling to find a spouse. And even younger people, and I know women who've never been married and have gone to uni and got all these, like, they're, mashallah, very well educated. And now they're ready to get married, and everyone at their age is already married. So there's a lot of different age groups that are struggling to find a spouse. What do you think is the underlying problem in our Muslim community? Why there's so many single people out there that are struggling to find the right person for them?
So just to be aware that this problem is across the board. So the broader community has the same issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Hence we've got all these matchmaking programs.
Yeah. That is your next project.
Clearly that's Muslim matchmaker is our next project. That's why we have all these matchmaking programs. Like you think about it. You know,
do you know the success rate of the matchmaking programs in the Muslim community? Okay,
I don't know the Muslim, but I was going to say
that'll be a question for our next episode.
I was going to say we don't have enough matchmaking programs that I know of anyway in the Muslim community. Yeah. I know people turn to online matchmaking, but you know, traditionally it was very much auntie, uncle. I know somebody. You know, but maybe we need to facilitate as a community and community leaders, and we need to facilitate this opportunity more for all age
another
brackets.
Gap in our community.
It is definitely a gap in our community, and I know some community organizations are doing a great job, but we can have more. We need more. I received an email once, not too long ago. An email was sent actually to the Board of Imams in Victoria about a woman in her late 30s, telling them, really saying that where do you want me to go? I want to be married. I'm trying to do all the right things. I'm protecting my chastity. I'm observant. I want to get married, but what am I supposed to do? And I think it's your responsibility. She said to them, I think it's your responsibility as religious leaders to help me fulfill this. And they really took it on board, and we had a discussion about it and said we really need to do something about this,
especially in that age group as well, because they might not even have the parents around to find them someone. Because you know, when you're younger, in my culture, it's and in the generation that I came from, it's like the parents are the ones who find who you're going to marry. It was very much almost like arranged type, where you know the parents do, even if it's not arranged, it's the parents that deal with it and they help you find. Then you meet the guy and you see if you like each other or not. I think with the younger generation, it's very different. They're all kind of going out and finding whoever they want to find. And it's very easy with all the, you know, WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram. It's so easy to find someone. But then I feel like that's the other gap in a community is then the older generation, like 30 to 40-year-olds who might have had a divorce or are still single. For them, it's like, who's going to find it for them? Like, they might not feel comfortable going out and finding their own. So that is like, another gap in the community. That's good to see it. The sheikhs,
they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, they actually helped out in that. Alhamdulillah. Have you encountered cases where a couple has decided to separate after completing a marriage course? Oh, you have?
Yes.
I was actually like, oh, should I ask that question?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that one.
Tell us about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had one situation where the couple did the entire course, and I could sense there was an issue that kept surfacing. One issue kept surfacing.
Yeah.
And by the time they completed the sessions...
Was this before they got married?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
it was
good.
before they got married.
Yes.
Yeah. By the time they came to their final session, the same issue kept surfacing and it was just not going to get resolved.
Yeah.
And then they decided that they weren't right for each other.
So it's actually, it kind of helps, you know, the question where I asked where, how do you know if this person is suitable for you? In a way, it almost does work like a matchmaking thing.
In a way.
It kind of filters out all the things that are important to you in a way, and see if there is that compatibility that you can work with.
In that way, yes.
Yeah.
So, but that was very respectful, it was very amicable.
Yeah.
And it was very dignified, which was lovely.
And I think, you know, I can see a benefit in that because it can save a lot of potential divorces that could have happened from people who rushed into things really quickly, didn't have those hard conversations, and then have to go through the whole... the tragedy that a divorce is in some cases. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah.
We'd love to do in the future a good endings project, because divorce is obviously permissible in our tradition, and there are relationships that would do better with a divorce. But the way we get divorced can be better. We can do it better. And so Allah Ta'ala tells us that we either live with them in kindness and goodness, or we depart with kindness and goodness. And so, I think that's also important. We come from a tradition where, alhamdulillah,
I've never even heard of someone say that before. That I love that to do even a course on good endings, because that is also so important. Because it can, you know, there was someone I had on the show early on Real Talk. I can't remember who it was. Sheikha Umanas, I think. And she said that from the research, with all the research that she's done, the depression or the hardship and the trauma that a divorce can bring is more than losing a loved one to death. So losing a loved one through divorce can be more challenging than losing a loved one through them dying. Like, it's so hard, much harder to get closure on. It's much harder to face it. And so, having a course like that, I think can really help couples, and after they separate, have a way to heal. Like, is that also one of the things you want to project on after good beginnings?
Let's get good beginnings. Let's create healthy relationships. That's our vision. I mean, that's our goal. Let's create healthy, thriving relationships in the way that Allah Ta'ala intended us to be, and not we just don't. There are tools, like I keep referring to. There is a methodology that Allah Ta'ala has given us. He didn't just say, get married. The Prophet said, it's my sunnah, get married, and then left us to do it on our own. He encouraged us to get married, and then he said, and this is how you maintain it. So just give you an example. There's in marriage counseling, there's the Gottman theory, who John Gottman and his wife have, I don't know if you're familiar with it, have done years of research into marriage, what makes a marriage thrive and what doesn't. And they found out that it's not the big holidays that make a marriage work. You know, people were like, well, let's go on holiday, and where's the diamond ring, and where's the big house? But it's the daily acts of kindness that actually... It's like when you're investing in your bank account, and he actually calls it that. And so it's like a daily investments. And when you think about the way Allah Ta'ala talks about marriage, he calls it mawadda and rahmah. He doesn't call it love. It's mawadda is, when you think about it, mawadda leads to love, but it's, when you break it down, it's what leads to love. It's when someone's good to you. It leads to love. Explain
to our viewers, for those who might not know, what does mawadda mean?
So mawadda is this deep connection and love. Right? That comes out of it.
Connection being the key word there.
Connection being the key word. And then how do we get there? And we get there through these daily investments. And these daily investments are acts of kindness. It's very rare that you're going to love somebody who's not good to you. I mean, people do, but that's dysfunctional, right? We love people that are good to us. We love people that are kind to us. That's why we love the Prophet ﷺ. We love him because he was so good to us. He was so good to everybody. He was rahmah to everyone. And so when we are daily investments in our relationship of Hey, I'll get you a coffee. Hey, I'll make the bed today. I'll pick up the kids.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take care of dinner.
It's these small little things
things
that's so true.
that you invest in. It's not the big overseas holidays.
Yeah.
That's what makes a successful relationship.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true, subhanAllah. Going back to the topic of, I feel bad talking about divorce now, just that beautiful thing you just said. But while you were talking about that, there was a question that popped into my head as well. That we are in the Muslim community at the moment, we see divorce in our generation, divorce was like taboo almost. Women just would stay in the marriage no matter what, because it was something that even the husband, that nobody wanted divorce, Now I'm finding there's just this increasing rate of divorce in the Muslim community where, like, especially nowadays, I'm seeing it, but it's happening amongst our generation as well, where women are like, and men too, just like they can't deal with each other anymore. They don't want to make it work and they separate. And then especially in the younger generation, a lot of them are getting married for a couple of months and then they just give up. Like, there's just that increasing rate of divorce. What do you think is the reason why it's becoming such a common thing now?
So just to be clear, and we both understand this, divorce is permissible.
Yes.
It's a solution to an unsuccessful, unhealthy relationship. So we, as Muslims, we believe there's a door there. Yeah. It's not closed completely. So of course there are some relationships that need to exit. What we're seeing now, what I'm witnessing now, however, and not necessarily in the situations where it's just completely not workable, but even in situations that can be workable, feel like very much like our society, we've become like we will just change. It's like almost a disposable society we've become, and unfortunately, we don't invest, and we don't have the knowledge to invest in our relationships for the long haul. I think maybe previous generations would recognize that to leave it may have severe outcomes for ABC. But today, I think men and women may feel like they don't necessarily need each other. Yeah. And they can be on their own.
And I wonder if that whole gender role topic that we were talking about before plays into that as well. That,
possibly.
Also, like, we're living in a world now where there's so much focus on the self. It's such a self-centric world, and parents are teaching their kids from the day that they're born now. It's like, well, what makes you feel good? You do you. How do you feel? So, how you mentioned before, like, you want for a marriage to thrive, it's those small acts of kindness that you're doing for someone all the time. If we're always just going to think about ourselves and I want to take care of myself, how do I feel? Then they're going into that marriage with that attitude of, well, if this isn't serving me, I'm not going to serve it back, or I'm not. Yeah. So I feel like that's like one of the big issues as well, is that real, such a self-centered world now, where back in our generation and our parents' generation, it was more, especially the women of like my mom's generation, it was the exact opposite. It was almost to the other extreme, which was like self-sacrificial. Like,
we have to make that point.
It was to the
other extreme, because they were given the advice of be patient and endure. Be
patient, and no matter
what you do. Yeah. They lived through abuse. They lived through domestic violence. They lived through,
because divorce wasn't considered permissible in a way. It was so taboo that it was like unacceptable to do.
And I'm wondering whether they didn't have many other choices. They didn't have financial choices. They didn't have housing choices. They didn't have many choices. So now we have a lot of choices. We have a lot of choices.
Especially with women who are working now as well, would almost be like, well, I don't need you. I can be self-sufficient. And then it goes back to the point of, well, what is the purpose of the marriage then? Is it just, a man providing for the woman and the woman cooking and cleaning? That you've got to see like the big purpose of it.
Absolutely. And so the big purpose of it, we go back to that Allah has chosen you to be together. And we always say that Allah Ta'ala creates opposites, has brought opposites, like the day and night. Just like we have summer and winter. We understand the opposites from each other. So we understand the summer from winter. We understand health when we get sick. Understand men and women are opposites. They're meant to be opposites. And when they are together, they complement each other. And they point to oneness who has no opposites. Allah doesn't have an opposite. We need each other. And I do not shy away from the word we need each other.
I love that.
Men and women need. They don't. It's not. I can do without him. I can buy myself flowers. No, I need you to buy me flowers.
But see, this is the thing. This is the generation that we're growing. They're constantly hearing this all the time. I can buy myself flowers. I can do this to myself. I can do this. I don't need a guy in my life. Or I don't need, subhanAllah. I feel like that this is like the test of this upcoming generation because of the society in which they're growing up in and what they're being taught, especially eradicating the whole concept of gender roles and gender itself, and then eradicating the whole concept of not even dependency on someone else, but in a way like you need the other person is a bit of a dependency. But see how now for me to even say that, I feel like, people are going to watch it and think, she said you need to be, you know what I mean? Like you have to be so careful with your words because of the way.
But I think about it. I think about myself. When I say I need my husband and he needs me, we both need each other to be a couple. We're incomplete without each other. Allah Ta'ala says you're half of each other. Yes. And He also says you're clothing, your garments
you're a garment
for each other.
of each other. It's so beautiful.
It's incredibly beautiful. It's not, Allah Ta'ala wants to humble us because when we need, Allah is the one that needs nothing and needs nobody. We need each other. Allah needs nobody. But this idea of independence and I don't need you, it's not saying that people can't live on their own and be single. Of course you can be single. We're talking about the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the general. Now remember, with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there are some people that should not get married. Like not just because it's his sunnah doesn't mean that everybody should be doing it. If a person is not going to be a good husband or a good wife and they have issues, whatever it might be, they may not be cut out for marriage. So it's not for everybody. We know that. But when Islam speaks, it speaks in the generality. It speaks in the general. For the well-being of society, it speaks in the general.
SubhanAllah. I love that. I love the way that you explain that. And I love, just talking about the beauty of the need for each other as well. And I feel like that's something, especially for the next generation, to constantly remind them of, because they are growing up in a society where it's all about, I'm independent. And women especially, their independence is seen as something empowering. So the idea that you need a man to fulfill you or to, it's almost seen as something bad. But
can I say, it's not about I don't wait for my husband to bring me happiness. This is very interesting. Because people assume that I need, when I say needs, like this spouse is going to fulfill me and bring me happiness and complete me. No. I want to complete the sunnah of the Prophet and the way of life that Allah Ta'ala had destined me to create to be. We don't have relationships as Muslims outside of marriage. If I'm going to be in a relationship, it needs to be in the sanctity and the sacredness of the marital unit. That's as Muslims, if we're talking within our tradition.
Bringing it all back to the deen.
Bringing it back to the deen. And then when we are together, we're worshipping together, and then we're creating a family, a generation that also points to oneness and worships. That is the purpose. And so we're passing on the baton and say, we teach you how to worship Allah. There is a purpose to our coming together. It is not about you fulfilling me. I am responsible for myself. I can't blame my husband if I'm unhappy in life or I'm not fulfilled or I want to pursue something. I need to take responsibility for me. When I say need, we complement each other to survive in this physical realm and spiritually.
That's beautiful. I love that. SubhanAllah. Thank you for sharing all that. I think it's been I've loved having this conversation with you. I want to end it with you giving some words of advice to new couples or people that are looking to get married or people who have just recently gotten married. End it with your I know
I didn't think about this one.
I know you haven't. You can even look at the camera that one if you want, or you can look at me, whichever you want. What advice would you give to our viewers who are just about to get married? Or even married couples as well.
Okay, so I'm going to give the advice that it may or may not be practical for people, but I really believe in it, so I'm going to have to be sincere and say it.
Sure.
And that is, what is your intention of marrying this person? Why have you chosen this particular person? Be very clear with your intention. When we as Muslims say, choose everything for the sake of Allah, and you'll see the benefits of, and you see the barakah, the blessings that come with it. When you choose your spouse for his sake, the blessings that will come into your life are beyond comprehension. And it doesn't mean you're not attracted to them. It doesn't mean that you don't share the same hobbies or values or whatever. Bring all that in. I'm not saying crunch your teeth and it's like, oh, I've got to marry this person. No, that's not our tradition. You need to love them. You need to want to be with them. But do it for his sake. And when you do something for Allah Ta'ala's sake, the reward and the openings just never cease. And so that's the advice that I give.
That's so beautiful. I don't even want to say anything else because I feel like that was such a beautiful way to end that episode. And actually, I'll ask it one more question. Are you going to launch this in Sydney?
Yes, inshallah. We're looking at next year, 2024. Inshallah, we're going to come up and do some training for marriage mentors. But couples in Sydney can already get a marriage mentor.
You can still do it online. Hey,
yeah,
that's right. Inshallah. Well, I hope, inshallah, that this serves this massive gap that we have in our community. And I feel like this is something, again, it's like, I love how, because you guys are partnering up with NZF with this particular project as well. Inshallah. And I love that it's just filling up gaps in the community. And that's why we have these conversations on Real Talk, is always talking about what the issues are and then what are the solutions. And I love bringing on people such as yourself who are the living, talking solutions to all these problems that we have. So may Allah put barakah in it. And thank you so much for coming. I absolutely loved having you. It was so nice to finally meet you in person, inshallah. And I hope we see you more in Sydney now.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
And Jazakallah khairan to all our viewers who watched. Hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and you can, inshallah, soon we'll be able to have all the episodes on Spotify so you can hear them back as well. Stay tuned next week. We've got a couple more episodes, and those are also some really good ones. I'm not going to spoil it yet and tell you what they are, so keep an eye out on the NZF Facebook page and Instagram page to get details of those episodes. And remember, as we are just on the cusp of the first 10 days of DHUL HIJJah, please make the most of it. Remember the ummah in your dua and put in your sadaqah. You can automate again your sadaqah payments through nzf.org.au and also give your qurban as well. May Allah reward you all. Assalamu alaikum.